What's going on, everyone? Phil here, and you're watching KO Gaming. Yesterday I had the opportunity to play the newly released Battleborn beta on the PlayStation 4 for a few hours. I checked out both the story as well as the competitive multiplayer that was available in this released beta, and I wanted to share my thoughts with you. Now, for those of you who don't know, Battleborn is the upcoming new IP releasing on May 3rd in the United States, made by Gearbox Software, the same company that's well known for its development of Borderlands 1 and 2. So a lot of people are interested in how this game is going to turn out, how similar it is to Borderlands, and or how similar it is to other game franchises, being that this is a hybrid first-person shooter along with other kind of MMO elements. So, without further ado, let's talk about what I thought of this beta. First off, there are two different modes available in this beta, story and competitive multiplayer. The story will allow you to play through 2 story-based missions with up to 5 people cooperatively playing over the internet, while the multiplayer has 10-person lobbies, 5 on 5, 2 different teams, playing on 2 different game modes. One is called Meltdown, where you escort your own minions who actually randomly spawn in the map. You have to escort them and protect them across the map so they can get to point A to point B and be destroyed and fill up your completion meter. Whichever team has their meter fill up first is the winner. There's also Incursion. Now, this is the really unique mode to the multiplayer of Battleborn. In this mode, the game basically turns into a MOBA. There are NPCs on the map that you're able to fight and kill. If you kill them, more NPCs of that type spawn, but they're actually on your side. You can now lead them throughout the map and have them attack enemies. You can also collect crystals, which are the currency of the game, which allow you to craft. You can craft turrets at certain points. You can upgrade those turrets to have shields or deal more damage. You can also summon NPC minions who will come down and help you in the fight as well. The goal of this mode is simple. There are 2 large-scale minions of yours that have large shields over them on the map. Each team is trying to attack both of those minions and destroy them within the certain time period. If a team does that before the time expires, they automatically win. If the time does expire, then whichever team has dealt most damage to both of these robots will be the winner. So it's kind of a unique take. It's a MOBA combined with the gameplay of a first-person shooter. I haven't really seen it done before, and it did feel quite refreshing. One of the staggering things about Battleborn is the amount of selectable characters that will be available once you unlock them all. There's 25 of them, ranging from more generic kind of run-and-gun military-style shooters to characters who have melee attacks, to characters who have ranged attacks, to characters who have a hybrid of that. And it's really cool because I played with 4 different classes, and each one really felt like I was playing almost a completely different style of first-person shooter. And I think that for someone who's looking for replayability in a first-person shooter style game, you may actually get it with Battleborn, especially with the amount of characters to unlock. It's going to keep you engaged for quite a long time. The art direction and style are definitely on par with other Gearbox Software games. There's a lot of quirky, kind of silly adult-oriented humor in the game, and the graphics are very cartoony. I think they're still kind of going for that Borderlands-esque kind of visual style, and although there is gore and there is a lot of violence, it still does seem kind of a more cartoony, watered-down world, so you're going to feel right at home if you've played the previous Borderlands games and wanted something of a similar kind of vein. Now, being completely honest, the story mode of the game seems like it could be a large part of the reason why people buy it. That social aspect of having 5 friends, play online, have vocal communications, have each character who's a different class. One's maybe a healer, one's more of a damage over time, one's a heavy tank-like character, and maybe one's kind of a buffer. Having a team like that that works hand in hand and in tandem could make the game an amazing cooperative experience. But I'm going to be very honest here. The story mode feels exactly like Destiny. You're going to be going through a predetermined order on a map. You're going to be running up against certain AI-controlled enemies. There's going to be tons of them. A lot of them are going to be more rare enemies, so they're bullet sponges. You'll have 1 or 2 maybe mini-boss fights during the course of this stage. There'll be a little bit of funny story in the Gearbox Software style with humor and stuff mixed into it. But for the most part, if you've played Destiny, you've been here and done that. It kind of performs almost exactly like Destiny. And really, the only main reason to play story mode are the unlocks. There you get tons of items and loot and things that drop during these modes that are going to allow you to progress in the game, to level up your characters by completing challenges, to unlock other characters by completing certain challenges, and to get loot that you're going to equip to your loadout so that the next match that you play, whether it's in multiplayer or single player, your characters will be buffed. So ultimately, is it anything amazing? Is it anything that hasn't been done before? Absolutely not. And again, if you've played Destiny, you're going to feel right at home here. Speaking of the loot system, I do want to point out that at least in this beta, it is drastically different from what you're used to from games like Borderlands and Destiny. You're not going to be finding random weapons with, different kind of elemental damage. You're not going to be finding powered up armor. No, all that you really find in the looting system are these items that are kind of like accessories or accentuations to your character that will either buff or increase damage in certain areas. For example, maybe your shots will do more damage through enemy shields for one round. Maybe you'll be able to have better health regeneration or better shield regeneration for a certain amount of time. That's the kind of loot that you can get in Battleborn, at least in the beta, and you equip it to a loadout, which then you can access and pick as you're selecting your character before any match. So it's kind of a unique system. It obviously leads to replayability. You also find credits through playing through the game, and you can use those credits to buy packs online, which will randomly unlock upgrades as well, and that's how the loot system works. Now on to the multiplayer, and I think this is where I have the most to say, because I think the multiplayer has insane amounts of potential with the fact that it has elements from other games kind of wrangled into it. It's not just a standard first-person shooter. You've got one mode where you're escorting minions throughout a map, and the whole strategy of your team is to try to protect those minions, while the other mode is all about playing it like a MOBA. And being that I've played games like Warcraft 3 before, I understood it was very important to not only be just trying to kill the enemies, but also getting the credits, building the turrets, summoning the minions, trying to get other things going after your enemies. And at one point, I actually had an opportunity to kind of sneak behind enemy lines, and I took out one of the giant minions all by myself, which ended up getting our team back on track for a victory, which was pretty sweet. Unfortunately, a lot of the people that I played with didn't understand those MOBA elements, and instead were just trying to treat it like it was a team deathmatch, and I didn't like that. However, I do think that there is massive potential in variety of gameplay, being that you can level your characters up in different ways. You can make them sometimes a healer, sometimes damage over time, sometimes a speedster, sometimes a stealth character, and again, depending on what class of the 25 you pick, the gameplay could be dramatically different. But there is one overwhelming complaint that I have about Battleborn right now, and it needs to be addressed. My number one issue with the Battleborn beta is the frame rate during multiplayer matches. The game only runs at 30 frames per second on the PlayStation 4, and frequently during large firefights dips below 20 frames per second, sometimes even kind of almost locking up for a short period of time. This is absolutely unacceptable in the modern era. This isn't 10 years ago when we were first experimenting with HD graphics on consoles. These game developers have had ample time to figure out how to harness and use the power of the hardware that's available to them. Battleborn, unfortunately, at least in the beta, did none of that. I mean, I said it multiple times as I was playing. This game would look gorgeous if it ran at 60 frames per second. And quite honestly, with all the different kind of abilities and things that the 25 classes have, when all of them are kind of being implemented at once in a big firefight and the game chops up to a low frame rate, it's absolutely impossible to keep your sights on any kind of an enemy. Many times I saw enemies kind of jumping around the screen and I couldn't get a kill because it was so hard with a low frame rate to maintain my sights and be able to keep continuously shooting them. It was absolutely ridiculous, and in 2016, this is not an acceptable issue anymore. If you want my $60 to buy your game, you'd better well make sure that the game is going to be playable at a competitive level. In my opinion, I don't think Battleborn will be unless they've improved the graphical engine and the frame rate in the final retail version. It's just too much of a mess. I don't want to play a game where just because there's 4 or 5 people in an area shooting each other, I lose control of whatever I'm trying to do and just die because I can't maintain my shots. It's absolutely ridiculous, and when other games have been doing 60 frames per second in first-person shooters for so many years, it is unacceptable to release a new game in 2016 like this. So I think this may be the deciding factor for a lot of people, especially with a lot of competition that Battleborn is going to have. You've got another game called Overwatch releasing just around the same time from Blizzard, and they really have to kind of stack up and say, look, this is why our game is better. Unfortunately, besides the 25 playable classes, I don't really think that this game is going to find a competitive advantage if it's going to be running at such a low frame rate. So my overall thoughts on Battleborn so far. I think that the story mode could be a big hit with those who've played similar games like Destiny and want a fun cooperative experience with their friends. I think that the online multiplayer actually has a lot of unique elements not seen in a first-person shooter before that could be very popular. But ultimately it all comes down to its competition and what game is going to run better in a competitive environment. From what I saw in the beta, this game does not perform very well on consoles, and having a frame rate that dips below 30 frames per second in a competitive first-person shooter in 2016 is just not acceptable. And quite honestly, I liked everything that I experienced while playing, but the one fact alone that the frame rate was so low is kind of my deciding factor in saying I'm probably not going to pick up this game when it's released in early May. That's just me being brutally honest. I mean, Gearbox really needs to know what the hell they're doing here with these modern consoles, and apparently they don't. That's a sad fact, but hey, I guess that's just reality. Well, that's it for my thoughts on the Battleborn beta, and I hope that you enjoyed the video. Do you agree or disagree with my take? Go ahead and leave a comment on the video and share your thoughts. If you'd like to see my raw gameplay of the Battleborn beta, I've left a link in the description of the video, along with a link to our Amazon Associates account and to the Patreon account at patreon.com/DarksidePhil. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you for more of my reactions later on. Peace out.